The night shift, quiet streets, but some passengers should never be picked up. Jake's last ride took him to the thin line between reality and the unknown. This wasn't just any Uber ride. Jake was an Uber driver in a big city. He preferred the night shift, escaping the chaos of daytime traffic for the calm of empty streets lit by flickering streetlights. That night at 1:23 a.m., his phone buzzed with a new ride request. The pickup spot was an abandoned industrial area on the city's north side, an old factory. The destination simply read "Last Stop." No address, no details, just those two words. Jake frowned. Probably a glitch, he thought. The distance seemed short, so he decided to take it instead of canceling. When he pulled up to the factory, the place was dead silent. Rusty iron gates creaked in the wind, and moonlight spilled through broken windows, casting eerie shadows on the ground. The app still showed, waiting for passenger, but no one was around. Just as Jake was about to give up and leave, the back door opened quietly. He glanced in the rearview mirror. A tall, thin figure slid into the seat. The man's face was hidden in shadow, his hat and coat collar obscuring everything. Jake didn't say a word. Uber had its share of weirdos, and he was used to it. He checked the app. The passenger's profile was blank. No name, no photo, nothing. New account, he told himself, shrugging it off, and started the navigation. Heading toward downtown, things started to feel off. The GPS had shown a familiar route at first, but then it veered onto a road that wasn't on the map. Streetlights flickered and went dark. Neon signs blinked out one by one. Traffic lights stopped working, and the streets were suddenly deserted. The radio crackled and fell silent. Jake's palms grew sweaty on the steering wheel. The navigation screen still read "Last Stop," but the estimated arrival time had glitched. Random symbols spun where the numbers should have been. The screen froze. A faint rasp came from the back seat. Jake peeked in the mirror and saw the passenger's silhouette shifting. The hat was gone, but his face remained cloaked in shadow. It was like his neck was stretching, his shoulders hunching unnaturally. Jake's breath quickened, but he kept quiet. The road left the city behind, plunging into a dark forest. Tree branches closed over the sky, blocking out the moonlight. The sound of tires on asphalt turned to gravel crunching beneath. "This road isn't real," Jake muttered, but the GPS kept urging him forward. Finally, the car slowed on its own. Ahead loomed an old railroad bridge, its rusted tracks vanishing into the fog. The navigation chimed. "You've reached your destination." The back door swung open and the passenger stepped out. As moonlight hit his face, Jake's blood ran cold. His eyes were pitch-black pits, his mouth a jagged slit full of needle-like teeth. The man walked to the middle of the bridge and vanished into the mist. Jake's trembling hands grabbed his phone. The app showed no record of the last ride. Last Stop was nowhere to be found. His watch read 1:38 a.m. Only 15 minutes had passed since the factory, but it felt like a lifetime. He started the car and sped back to the city. On the way, the navigation suddenly kicked on, and a metallic voice echoed, "The last stop is waiting for you." Jake slammed the brakes in panic, but the voice was gone. When he got home, he saw streaks of white in his hair in the mirror. He never told anyone about that night and quit Uber for good. Days later, he stumbled across an old newspaper clipping by chance. 25 years ago, near that same factory, a taxi driver had been murdered by a tall, thin passenger and plunged off a cliff with his car. Jake's skin crawled. That man had come back for his last stop. What about you? If you ever called an Uber at night, would you be sure you're the only one in the car? Maybe your last stop has already been decided. If you were in Jake's shoes, what would you do? Let me know in the comments. Lily, a 24-year-old exchange student from London, had been living in Chicago for a few months. She relied on Uber to get home from late shifts at her part-time job. On a cold November night at 11:45 p.m., she opened the app to call a ride. The pickup was outside the diner in Logan Square, her usual spot, and the drop-off was her apartment in Wicker Park. The request was accepted fast. The driver's profile popped up. John D. No photo, just a gray silhouette. No reviews either. Exhausted, Lily didn't think much of it and confirmed. When the car arrived, it was an old beat-up sedan, rusty doors, foggy windows. She slid into the back seat and said hi, but got no reply. Glancing in the rearview mirror, she couldn't see the driver's face. His hoodie and cap kept it shrouded in shadow. The navigation was set, and the car pulled away quietly. At first, it felt normal. Streetlights flashed by, the radio buzzed softly, but as they neared the Kennedy Expressway, things turned strange. The radio cut out, and the highway lights flickered and dimmed. Lily mumbled, "Weather's acting up, huh?" But there was no wind, no rain, just an unnatural stillness. She noticed the driver's hands on the wheel, long bony fingers, almost skeletal. In the mirror, his head twitched slightly, and two dark spots gleamed where his eyes should have been. Her stomach churned. She checked her phone. The app had frozen, the map just a blank screen. The route shifted. Instead of heading to Wicker Park, the car took an unfamiliar exit. Streets narrowed, buildings faded into dark trees. Lily's voice trembled. "Hey, this isn't the way. Turn back to Wicker Park." No response. "Can you hear me?" she shouted. Nothing. A chill spread through the back seat. She looked in the mirror again, and her breath stopped. His head had turned fully around 180 degrees, while his body faced forward. His face came into view, hollow sockets for eyes, rotting skin, and a twisted, frozen grin. Lily screamed, yanking at the door. It wouldn't open. In a panic, she pounded the window and shoved the handle until it gave. She threw herself out, tumbling onto the road, and smashed her head hard, blacking out. When she opened her eyes, she was in a hospital bed. Her head throbbed, a bandage wrapped around her forehead. A cop sat beside her. "Miss, what do you remember?" they asked. Shaking, Lily recounted it all. The old sedan, John D., the wrong route, that horrifying face. The officers took notes, their faces tense. They checked Uber's records, no trace of the ride that night. No John D. existed. When Lily said, the car looked ancient, like from the 70s, one detective paused. Digging deeper, they uncovered the truth. Back in 1978, a serial killer had driven a cab in Chicago, known only as John Doe. With an old sedan, he'd lured passengers, killed them in remote spots around the city, and their bodies were never found. After dozens of murders, he vanished one night, car and all, never seen again. The detective said, "A few people escaped that car by jumping out. They all swore he wasn't human." Lily's blood ran cold. She'd sat in that cursed seat. The police tried to track John D., but the trail ended in 1978. He'd disappeared into thin air. Discharged from the hospital, Lily deleted Uber and kept that night to herself. But sometimes, she'd hear that guttural voice from the car echoing in her mind. "This ain't your stop." And whenever an old sedan's engine rumbled past, she felt those empty eyes watching her from the shadows. Lily survived, but was she really alone that night? Who knows? Maybe one night, you'll get into that car too. Paranormal never ends in Joseph City. For more dark stories, like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to join me.